Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix. This is ROGUS Kingdom of the Lost Souls. It's $4.99, comes out on the Steam store today. But before I begin this Let's Try, I want to make sure you guys know that this was obtained via a key from the developer. I wrote out to them, saw their upcoming game coming out on Steam, and in exchange for covering their game, they gave me a key to take a look at it. Now, I'm about 3 or 4 hours in at this point, and it's an interesting run-em-up. It's running down the screen and attempting not to die. The problem here is that, unfortunately, there's not a lot of complication to it, and it's too simplistic and gets very old very quickly, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Alright, so this is the tavern that you will spend your in-between missions periods on. You can get new spells here, but I will get to that in a little bit. I want to show you the main gameplay first before we come back here again, because this is the brunt of the gameplay. So the idea here is that you're running to the right, and basically you need to last as long as possible. You do that in a couple ways. First, you saw there, I got my sword, which I can just, mow enemies down with. I have the numeric spells on the bottom there that I can cast, as well as a shield to block any projectiles coming. Now, there I tried to transform into the Dryad portion, and, well, I didn't make the jump. So, the idea here is that use your powers in a wise manner to try to get as far as you can. Now, each spell that you use has its own cooldown and its own ability. There, for example, the Dryad portion, you can walk and kill any enemy you run into. It's got a very long cooldown timer, and so you got to be very careful while you use it. Now, the sword is effective in terms of being able to take on little enemies that are coming towards you, and the shield is probably your most important portion because the projectiles in this game are fast. They are very, very quick, and as you see there, if you don't have your shield ready at any point, you're gonna have yourself some problems. You notice there that I used the fourth spell, that little sort of brew spell, that makes me go all the way down and sort of, hit the ground in sort of a ground pound sort of situation like Yoshi from Super Smash Brothers. I have my wings here, which I can sort of fly around with. The problem with the wings is that it's pretty much used to get through sort of, precarious situations like you're about to fall into the hole. But the thing is that you don't really want to stay up in the air, because the thing is you need to kill enemies. The thing with about enemies that you miss, like you sort of jump over, is that they'll throw projectiles at you. And with only the fireball being the spell that you can throw backwards at that point, makes it a little bit hard for you to sit there and go, yeah, I have to do this. As you see there, I'm using my shield trying to make sure that I don't, take too much damage, but sooner or later the shield's energy gives out, and thus I have to use it. Now, you'll notice in the top left-hand corner there is a point spell. And the idea here is that every time you use a spell, a certain amount of points are taken off. So you can't spam fireballs, for example, because you're going to lose points. Now, you'll notice that when I'm playing that I will actually use the fireball and sort of throw it before I come to a ledge. It's worth the point portion in that portion because, again, one of the huge problems I see with this game is the fact that the projectiles are so fast. They really don't give you a lot of time to react, and even when they do, you're able to react to it, there's not a lot of time for you to do anything specific. You really can only bring up your shield. If you throw a fireball at them, well, guess what? The projectile's still coming at you at that point. Now, the problem here is that you probably are noticing we're doing the same thing over and over again. And that's the majority problem here in terms of the gameplay. The problem is that, well, it's nice to have 6 different spells overall. It doesn't add enough variety into the level in terms of the procedurally generated segments here. I think they should say randomly generated, not procedurally generated. You can have long stretches where you don't have enemies, where you're just jumping over cliffs and things like that. Other times you could have millions of enemies coming at you. The thing about that is that this is all a point system. And the thing about the point system is that the point system heavily favors killing enemies over getting farther and farther. And that sort of is going to come down to luck. Now, sooner or later you may run into enemies, but you sort of are sitting there waiting for something to happen, and if you get a sort of a segment of enemies like that, then all of a sudden you've got your highest score. Yeah, like here, I got 4,000 now. I think this is my 6,000 run, I'm pretty sure. But it's one of those situations where just like, if you throw the right set of enemies on it, okay, that's a great run. But if you don't, then I'm sort of doing absolutely nothing for the rest of the time. Now, the game's look is, I mean, it is the sort of old pixel style. I did like the Dryad, for example, and I think I'm using Dryad wrong there. I keep on wanting to say Druid, but it's obviously not a Druid. It's like those creatures from the Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's in old mythology folklore, but that one is really useful in terms of like getting through a section that can be really hard. That all of a sudden, like you see a bunch of enemies and you're like, crap, I don't know if I can get through this. Now you're always running right. You don't have the ability to move left, which can be problematic, especially after a jump. If you mistime your jump, you have absolutely no recovery with the exception of your spells. You basically have to pop a spell at that point, whether it be the lightning spell like you saw there or the Dryad portion. Because if you don't, well, guess what? You're in trouble. I actually really like the artwork on that. I don't know what it is. It's the animation in particular about it. It just feels big. It feels lifelike. But as you see there, I run into an enemy because I didn't time things right, but I did get a best score at this point, so cool. Now we're going to go back to the tavern for a second because I want to show you guys some spells. The way you get spells in this game is you have to interact with the environment. There's only 6. The problem with the 6 is that it's not varied enough to really affect the game in any way. And again, this is a major problem with it. If the spells were all balanced with each other in terms of like you really had a choice of one over the other, I could see that making a bigger difference here. But the thing is like, for example, I switched out the Druid for the Rat, and you'll see here that the Rat's not going to do as much good as the Druid. I have the Lightning one here. I'm going to replace it with the sort of down, I keep on wanting to make Super Smash Brothers references, down A from Link in terms of sort of, you know, hitting the ground. So this one, I have the ability to launch a lightning bolt with my 4, which takes a little bit of time, and then I have the ability to turn into the Rat. The Rat will sneak by everything, but you won't be able to attack. And again, with the point system as it is, it's pointless. Why would I choose the Rat over the Druid? Because I'm barely making any points here. Meanwhile, I'm dodging all these enemies that I really don't, you know, I really want to kill rather than anything else. And that's the major problem, again, with ROGUS. The lack of variety and the sort of sameness of the game. It's an arcade kind of game where you're playing it over and over again. I could see this working on like a mobile platform in terms of like, okay, a quick startup game or a quick game with simple controls. But here, it just doesn't do the job in terms of like keeping my interest. Again, with other games like Talamir, for example, I feel like there's a lot better options rather than anything else. You saw the delay on the lightning there. Now, I will give the game credit for one thing, though. If you die, your sword is still active, and so if your sword goes flying at an enemy, it can actually kill them, and I actually enjoy that a lot because it just like up and dead. So it's got a nice mood or game, you know, sort of gameplay that could really be fleshed out for later expansions of the game or different content. But unfortunately, again, like I'm saying, you've seen me play pretty much the same thing over and over again. The enemy variety isn't that big. It's the same enemies. The fact of the matter is that you get this idea of you're doing the same thing over and over again, but what's different this time? Why should I play this over and over again, especially with no real sort of mission in mind? I also wanted to show you that section of it. You notice how I sort of just dropped into the pit. The thing about the pits is that you cannot actually drop anywhere further into them. Like for example, you see he's like walking on the X plane in terms of walking on the ground there. If you go anywhere under that in terms of those pits, you will die. You can't jump yourself out of it or use the feather spell. You literally are stopped from doing that. And again, that's a major problem for the game because it's a rule set that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But not only that, it's just like there are certain situations where you could have really used that. Like, okay, if I see a bunch of enemies coming at me, okay, let me drop down there and then jump back up at the last second. It would have added some strength to it. And you see the sword sort of slide along there and take the enemies out. Overall, unfortunately, I have to say this game is a pass at the moment. It's got an interesting concept on the surface, but unfortunately it just doesn't execute it very well. And again, with the game being very, very much the same over and over again, it's not going to be a game that's going to really keep your attention. If I see more content put into it in terms of the different spells and a little bit more variety in terms of the sort of running portions, I could see this being a recommendation at $5. But even now, there are other games at $5 that you can get a similar experience from that is definitely more worth it in my mind. It has more content to it. It may not be the same exactly, but things like Talamir, where I see more complexity and more, variety in terms of gameplay, and you're not feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over again. All right, this is Dragnix signing out. Again, I will leave my Steam review in the comments below, and like, comment, subscribe. Again, I always ask, if you like this or dislike this, let me know, and let me know exactly what I could do to improve it. All right, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you all have a wonderful day and keep on gaming. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.